Elegant string of pearls configuration. Unfortunately, incredibly unstable.
And what exactly does this stuff do?
If the rocket renders it aerosol, it can take out the entire city of people.
Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage race against time to defuse deadly gas missiles hidden inside Alcatraz in The Rock. One of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. We'll also take a look at the screen debut of the comic strip superhero known as the Phantom, plus a new drama featuring the radiant Catherine Deneuve. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is The Rock, and here's a film that wore me out in the first hour and entertained me in the second hour for completely different reasons. Worn out early, this action picture has been edited like Speed on speed. There's never a moment's rest as the FBI chemical weapons expert Nicolas Cage joins forces with a former British spy, played by Sean Connery, as they try to defeat a much-decorated American soldier, Ed Harris, who is trying to bring attention to the plight of American soldiers involved in covert operations who are killed and then ignored by our government. Are you still with me? Anyway, Ed Harris and his crew lock up tourists as hostages on Alcatraz and aim highly toxic weapons missiles at San Francisco itself.
You alert the media. I launch the gas. You refuse payment. I launch the gas.
You've got 40 hours till noon, day after tomorrow, to arrange transfer of the money. I am aware of your countermeasure. You know and I know it doesn't stand a chance. Hummel from Alcatraz, out.
More furious action ensues as Nicolas Cage is joined by Sean Connery and government troops in trying to reclaim Alcatraz and get those hostages free and defuse the bombs. And Connery is particularly helpful because, according to the story, he's the only person ever to escape from Alcatraz, The Rock, and survive.
Catch one of those flame bursts, you're a corpse.
Thank you.
Commander, you said never leave his sight, but
Stand fast, Lieutenant.
Have a nice day.
Last, here's where the movie starts to get enjoyable, and it's not because of the action or the visual pyrotechnics. No, it's because of Nicolas Cage, who brings his usual hang-loose, wild acting style to a traditional action picture. Suddenly, this movie has a human component.
Listen, I'm just a biochemist. And most of the time, I work in a glass jar and lead a very uneventful life. I drive a Volvo, a beige one. But what I'm dealing with here is one of the most deadly substances the Earth has ever known. So what do you say you cut me some friggin' slack?
Obviously, I'm giving a mixed review to The Rock. If there had been more of Cage early on, talking quietly, being funny in some way, I'd give it a positive review. There's a little of that, but not enough. But the pacing and the premise were really agitating to me. For long stretches of time, I simply wanted to escape from The Rock. So a mixed review, thumbs down from me.
We're not even close on this because I really liked it a whole lot. And I liked it even though it's really cobbled together from pieces of other pictures. You know, I wonder, it was produced by Jerry Bruckheimer and the late Don Simpson.
Right.
Now, Quentin Tarantino attacked their Top Gun in a famous movie monologue saying it was a homosexual code.
Right.
And in this movie, they have both the hypodermic needle to the heart and the ending, which is a Mexican standoff. Now, those are both Tarantino trademarks, so I think they're getting their revenge. And they borrow from a bunch of other pictures, too, including Escape from Alcatraz and Bullet and even The Fugitive. But nevertheless, it's all put together very well. And what I like about it, in particular, is the same thing you do, the chemistry between Cage and Connery. That really works.
But, Roger, weren't you worn out by this?
No,
you know what,
I wasn't.
You even know what I'm referring to?
I was stimulated by it. I was excited by it. I enjoyed it. It moved. It was efficient.
Boy,
it was entertaining.
Not the first hour for me. I was sort of laughing at it. What about the premise? What about Ed Harris's character? Didn't you think it was totally absurd?
I mean, if you're going to start in on premises, you could start in with every premise, starting with Die Hard, Lethal Weapon. I mean, all of these.
Oh, no. A single madman.
The moment June the 1st comes around, premises go out the window in Hollywood, and anything goes.
This one is laughable. Die Hard seems like a rational documentary compared to this goofball plot.
Okay, well, and we know you like documentaries.
You got
Next movie, it was Thoreau to change the subject.
A lot.
Who said that most men lead lives of quiet desperation. And our next movie is about one of those men and his desperation. The name of the movie is Heavy, and it's about a lonely short-order cook who lives under the thumb of his domineering mother and dreams of the beautiful young waitress who has come to work in the restaurant. The waitress is played by Liv Tyler, a relative newcomer to the movies. The cook is Pruitt Taylor Vince, and the mother is Shelley Winters.
I hate making pizza.
Oh, but he loves making breakfast. This young man takes very good care of his mother.
The cook's name is Victor, and he's a person of very few words. It's like the desire to speak has been crushed out of him. The other waitress in the restaurant is well played by the singer Deborah Harry. She's jealous of the newcomer, and this emotional crisis in the kitchen inspires Victor to make one of the longest speeches of his entire life.
Can't you be nicer to her?
Nice. Did you hear what she said to me?
You don't have to be nice. Just be nicer.
Heavy is a wonderfully acted movie that finds exactly what it wants to say about these people, about how the young waitress is sweet and not very aware of the sadness in the world, and about how the older waitress, played by Debbie Harry, has reached the point in her life where her choices are limited to a drunk and a mama's boy, and about how poor Victor is like a dog who has been chained up so long that even when he's free, he still stays in his cage. I found myself empathizing with all of the characters in Heavy, who in a way need the strong will of the Shelley Winters character and don't know how to behave without it.
I'm glad I like the picture too, and I'm glad you focused on the Deborah Harry character, because we can anticipate the fact of this overweight guy who is alone, never had a date and all that. That's obvious, it's well done, but obvious. But to have the sophistication to put in another character, the Deborah Harry character, who is also cut off in her own way, that to me enriched the picture, and I watched all the triangulations that are possible in that combination of four characters.
There's a real key line right in the early part of the movie. There's a guy who always sits at the bar, he's always drunk, and at one point...
Played by Joe Grafazzi, who's an actor who doesn't get a lot of attention.
He's a very good performance, yes, it is. And she says to him about the owner of the restaurant, Shelley Winters, she's trying to get even with me. That's why she's hired Liv Tyler. And, of course, she thinks maybe her son will marry Liv Tyler. She's a dreamer. Yeah. But what the Deborah Harry character is thinking is, you know, she doesn't have any options at all except maybe to marry either this guy or the drunk.
Hey, she's the prettiest woman in the bar, and along comes somebody who replaces her.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming up next, who wears a purple bodysuit in the jungle? The Phantom does, and he's out to save the world.
You've been out of mood.
Well, somebody say something.
You're all mixed up with the same brotherhood, Diane.
That's Billy Zane playing the title role in The Phantom, the new movie based on the popular comic strip that apparently has been going strong for 60 years. But on screen, the sight of a guy wearing a purple bodysuit in the middle of a jungle, or even on the outskirts of the jungle, does stretch credibility. And credibility isn't helped by Billy Zane's performance and manner.
Follow that car.
Oh, yeah. Take my money, but don't hurt me.
Al, take it easy. I'm a friend of Kid Walker's. I need your help. No.
Hey! Hey, you! Come back here!
His assignment in The Phantom is to prevent an assortment of bad guys from collecting a set of 3 magical skulls, one of silver, one of gold, and one of jade, and thereby harnessing power to rule the world.
Phantom! Let's get him! He's dying!
And here's another power-hungry bad guy, a guy named Drax, played very well by Treat Williams. In fact, the villains in The Phantom are far more enjoyable than the Phantom himself.
Show me the power! Show me the power! Yes!
The Phantom is another action picture I'm giving a mixed review to, and I've already outlined my split opinion. Hated The Phantom, laughed at The Phantom, but I like Treat Williams in some of the action scenes. The direction of my thumb is down because of the bottom line. I'm not interested in seeing the further adventures of the Phantom.
Oh, Gene, I really love this movie, and I like the way the Phantom looks. The Phantom was created in 1936. He is the first of the comic book superheroes.
Right.
And he I think it was very brave of them to keep the look of that 1930 strip instead of trying to modernize like they did with Batman. I mean, Batman's in uniform, it looks like he's living inside a tire. You know, this, the whole klutziness of the fact that the Phantom, when he lands on a truck, he really lands. He's not, doesn't have cat-like grace, is part of the charm of this movie and the look of the film. I mean, I would recommend to people that if they want to completely forget everything about the plot and everything about the story,
which wouldn't be a bad idea.
This movie is worth seeing for the production design by Paul Peters. This is one of the greatest looking movies I've ever seen. The colors, the interiors.
The interior of the Skull Cave is very well
what about
done.
Drax's office in New York?
That looks
fabulous.
Good, but
it's a good looking movie.
Did you find the Phantom someone that you cared about the least? Really?
I found the Phantom very amusing. I liked the way what Billy Zane did with that. Instead of standing around like some kind of a stick, to give the guy...
I think he's very stiff.
No, to give the guy a personality, a wry humor, an edge.
I don't think he has a wry humor.
Quality of kidding himself a little bit. There's a lot going on there.
I think he's quite stiff, Roger, and that's where my problem was. Every time I saw him...
Well, okay, Gene, I just want to get the bottom line out. It's PG rated. I think it's terrific. They didn't load it up with a lot of extra violence. It's a great family picture, and I just loved looking at it.
Yeah, well, I liked looking at parts of it, the parts when he wasn't on the screen, the Phantom. When we come back, a TV star feels trapped by an adoring fan who works for her mother. Frank Whaley and Blythe Danner star in Homage.
Oh, please, Miss Samuel. Give an eligible guy a break. It's no big deal.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, Archie, I really want to spend my time here as unsocially as I can.
Sure.
Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks plays the star of a TV series in that scene from the new movie Homage, and the young man, played by Frank Whaley, who often plays characters just like that in the movies, very amusingly, is a mathematician who has taken a summer job as the handyman at a ranch owned by the TV star's mother. When the star comes home for the summer, Whaley is overwhelmed with emotions that are completely inappropriate and out of scale. He adores her, but he's also an obnoxious pest who assumes that because they're in the middle of nowhere together, she's going to want to star in the movie he's written or maybe even become his lover.
One of your quasi-intellectual, intergalactic, sadomasochistic tales where I'd have to spend a great deal of time as a naked hostage.
Quasi what?
Not exactly the image I'm supposed to maintain for my show.
Oh, I see. So the fact that in your first movie you took your clothes off, that is not in conflict with the image that you have to maintain for your show?
Oh, I see. We're a cinema history buff along with our other interests. That was a long time ago, Archie.
The mother is played by Blythe Danner. She considers her daughter an alcoholic and drug addict who is basically throwing her life away, and although she's happy at first to see her daughter, they start fighting.
Let's have one of those fabulous, cathartic conversations that parents and children always have right before the final commercial message. When you're sober, Lucille, maybe we can take a whack at it.
One of the key supporting roles is played by Bruce Davison as a public defender who gets Whaley's case after there's violence at the ranch.
New shrimp tomorrow, Arch. Mix them up good.
Smitty, why don't you just tell me what kind of diagnosis you want these nitwits to come in with?
I want you to be more complicated than their combined abilities to define you.
Homage is like Heavy, the earlier film, in a way, in that they're both about lonely and desperate alcoholics and the people who love them or don't love them. But Homage isn't as simple and straightforward, and I think that's a handicap. It begins by telling us the outcome of the story, and then everything is told in flashback, and the surprise ending comes because of a melodramatic twist. The movie was adapted by Mark Medoff from his stage play. That's the same man who wrote Children of a Lesser God. And I think there are too many stage mannerisms and structural gimmicks in the film. I prefer the more direct and cinematic approach of Heavy, which depends on the people instead of the technique to tell the story.
This is what was a problem for me. I felt that I could have handled it in a more straightforward manner. At the same time, this subject of obsession fascinates me. There have been many great films written about it. If you want to talk about fans, let's take a look at Scorsese's King of Comedy, which does, even in a great director, knows enough to proceed in a more linear fashion. There was no need for throwing it all up in the air and recombining this structure.
No, it didn't need to be shuffled, right.
At the same time, what I like about this guy is that he anchors the characters in very specific professions, and so they do play real. And I think a mathematician, teacher, you know, actress, that kind of thing makes this intelligent, but again, too complicated for its own good.
Okay, coming up next, a feuding brother and sister are drawn together as their mother becomes ill in My Favorite Season with Catherine Deneuve.
Our next film from France is about as far removed as it can be from the big Hollywood action pictures we reviewed earlier in the show. It's André Téchiné's My Saison Préférée, My Favorite Season, about an adult brother and sister who have feuded, indeed not communicated, for years until their mother suffers a stroke and suddenly they're brought together.
Et maintenant ça recommence. À chaque fois qu'on se voit, tu m'insultes.
Tout le monde pas, je me souviens pas.
Tu m'as même dit que j'avais épousé le plus pauvre de mes soupirants devant mes enfants en plus.
J'avais vu, j'étais pas bien.
That's the great Catherine Deneuve and Daniel Auteuil as her brother, and when they're together with their mother and Deneuve's husband, all kinds of age-old resentments are inflamed.
Qu'est-ce que vous faites? Je veux plus. Tu m'as compris, tout jamais. Hein? Tu restes avec ta famille. Moi, je vais me coucher. J'en ai marre. Merde!
This movie is very much an investigation about how layer upon layer of anger can be built between relatives and how difficult and rare it is to even attempt to strip that away. Here Deneuve realizes that with her own husband.
Je supporte pas ce qu'on est devenus. Je supporte pas ce qu'on est devenus tous les deux. Ça me fait horreur.
Well, at least she recognizes that in time to do something about it. My Favorite Season is a lot of talk, but the director, André Téchiné, also has total control of the pauses in the film, the pauses between the words, the silences of realization and discomfort. He'll start the camera, for example, on Deneuve's face and pan away to a pond, and we know exactly what she's thinking, and we have the time to think it along with her. I very much like being under the control of André Téchiné in Mes Saisons Préférées, My Favorite Season.
You know, one of the things that intrigued me about the movie is there's a whole subplot involving Deneuve's daughter and her adopted son and the son's girlfriend. And indeed, there's even a very strange scene where the daughter and the son go to the bedroom with the girlfriend and talk her into stripping. And while she's stripping, the father walks in, sees it, has something else on his mind, and leaves. And I was wondering what this subplot had to do until I realized that it all goes back to the parents who have never really confronted their own emotions and never really felt anything. And they have raised children who don't really feel anything either, and they don't really feel anything about their children.
And that's why the casting of Catherine Deneuve was a masterstroke.
Yes.
Because here is the classic French beauty. Exterior, a terrific actress, and here we get to see it. But to use her and to see her break the brittle facade is perfect.
And that's why it's an interesting film. It really is. It gets right underneath and deals with things. Okay, when we come back, our video pick of the week starring the man who gave swashbuckling its name.
Siskel and Ebert's Video Pick of the Week, brought to you by Orville Redenbacher's Gourmet Popping Corn, the best part of the movies.
For 20 years, from around 1915 to 1935, the biggest action star in the movies was Douglas Fairbanks. He was Harrison Ford, Tom Cruise, and Arnold Schwarzenegger all rolled into one, and because he was a gifted athlete and stuntman and could play comedy as well as drama, his movies always showcased his versatility. Now 12 of his classics, restored in sparkling fresh prints, have been released as a collection of 10 video cassettes called Douglas Fairbanks, King of Hollywood. Here he is in The Mark of Zorro, the 1920 film that defined him as an action hero after 5 years of lighter films. He was one of the first of the screen Robin Hoods in a 1922 film that boasted some of the most sensational sets ever constructed for the movies before or since. And here he is in The Thief of Baghdad, a 1924 fantasy adventure where Fairbanks did incredible stunt work. Our video pick of the week, Douglas Fairbanks, King of Hollywood from Kino Video. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this show. A split vote on The Rock. I enjoyed his technical skill and rousing adventure as well as the performances. Gene was worn out by the action and only really admired Nicolas Cage's performance. 2 thumbs up for Heavy, the touching story of loneliness and repression in a small-town diner. Congratulations to writer-director James Mangold. We split on The Phantom with Billy Zane as the first of the comic superheroes. I was swept up in its visual production, but Gene admired only Treat Williams' performance and some of the action sequences. 2 thumbs down on Homage. We both thought the technique got in the way of the emotion. And finally, 2 thumbs up for My Favorite Season, Ma Saison Préférée, with Catherine Deneuve and Daniel Auteuil as a brother and sister who uneasily jostle for position in a competition that began in their childhoods. And so for me, you missed the boat on 2 fabulous adventure pictures, the great-looking Phantom and the very exciting The Rock.
And Roger, you're the captain of that boat, because I think that the more interesting pictures are the small ones this week. Ma Saison Préférée and Heavy. I think that these are the ones that
Oh,
take
well,
the
I'm
chances.
recommending those too, but I think that you really should have been a little more
lenient?
open, in particular,
Lenient?
not lenient, no, open to the wonderful look of the
Roger,
family.
I gave 2 mixed reviews. By definition, if they're mixed reviews, I had to be open to positive things.
Was the thumb up?
Think about it.
Or was the thumb down?
The theme was down. Roger, support the notion of a mixed review. You, above all, should be smart enough to do that. That's it for this week. Next week, we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including Jim Carrey as the cable guy and Ma Flanders, starring Robin Wright as an 18th century adventuress and Morgan Freeman as her protector and friend. That's next week. And until then, the balcony is closed.
Your arthritis pain can't wait. Call now and break through to fast-acting, long-lasting relief with Menthicin.
By refinancing your mortgage at the money store, you can lower your interest rate and reduce your monthly payments, even if your credit is less than perfect. Call 1-800-LOAN-YES.
We're challenging shoppers to compare their Tilex to X14 mildew stain remover.
Ooh, the X14 is working a lot faster than the Tilex. I didn't do anything. It's perfect.
I'm David Orrick, maker of the incredibly powerful Orrick vacuum. Some people stand behind their products. I stand under mine.